voice unwearied raises. Be joyful in the Lord, my heart, my soul and body. Bear your part, to God all praise and glory. And then for our final song this morning, if you'll turn to number 504, number 504, our final song before our message today. Oh, say, but I'm glad. Number 504. I hope that you can be glad in the Lord today. Number 504, we'll sing all three verses. Oh, say, but I'm glad. There is a song in my heart today, something I never had. Jesus has taken my sins away. Oh, say, but I'm glad. Oh, say, but I'm glad, I'm glad. Oh, say, but I'm glad. Jesus has come and my cup's overrun. Oh, say, but I'm glad. Wonderful, marvelous love he brings into a heart that's sad. Through darkest tunnels the soul can sing. Oh, say, but I'm glad. Oh, say, but I'm glad, I'm glad. Oh, say, but I'm glad. Jesus has come and my cup's overrun. Oh, say, but I'm glad. Won't you come to him with all your care, weary and worn and sad? You too will sing as his love you share. Oh, say, but I'm glad. Oh, say, but I'm glad, I'm glad. Oh, say, but I'm glad. Jesus has come and my cup's overrun. Oh, say, but I'm glad. Thank you for your singing this morning. Very good. We have a whole row of boys here, don't we? My word. You learned that song in school. That's good. I'm glad you did. It's a good song. It's a good song to learn. It's a good song to learn in school. The birthday boy. We're back in the book of Judges this morning. If you'll turn to Judges chapter 16. Judges chapter 16, we're going to begin with the same verse we started with last Sunday. Judges chapter 16, continuing through the life of Samson here. I think a very impactful look at the life of Samson. At least it has been for myself. You'll remember we're looking at the book of Judges as a whole and paralleling two things. We're looking at the very flawed individuals that God uses through the book of Judges to accomplish his will. And at the same time, we see moments, we see these very almost mythological moments. This is of all the stories in the scripture, these are the stories that to me come across as the most legendary, if you will. This is me personally, I think a lot of, hang on, I gotta be careful here. I believe personally there are many stories that we know in this day and age from Greek mythology, probably predominantly, but other Middle Eastern mythologies. And I think a lot of them have their root in the book of Judges. Everyone says, "Oh, the book of Judges stole from these stories." I think maybe it was the other way around. That's just me personally. I find here just such a fascinating assembly. What a wide, weird cast of characters, and yet God uses them in powerful ways in spite of their weaknesses, in spite of their deficiencies. And that, of course, that alone is a great lesson for us. But as we're going through this, as God gives us these stories, we are seeing paralleled to that, parallel to him using these individuals at specific times, is the degradation, the ongoing degradation of his people and their bond to God, their connection to God, their compliance with God and his law and what he established, right? We've talked about this. He starts off with Joshua. Joshua says, okay, guys, we're here. We're in the land. God gave you the law. Let's do it. And the people say, yay. And then Joshua dies and they're like, never mind. And they just keep going down and it keeps getting worse. We've been pointing that out. We've been pointing out all along the way. We see so many recurrent themes through the book of Judges, and they're consistently getting worse. And you get to Samson. I feel that Samson, I mentioned this when we started, I feel that Samson is, in and of himself, a microcosm of the whole book of Judges. I don't think it's a coincidence that Samson was from the tribe of Dan, which means judge. I think that Samson himself exemplifies, symbolizes the children of Israel at this time. And so much here, so much that I think maybe we have missed as we've gone over these stories. So often we hear them in Sunday school. We hear about Samson, he was a big, strong guy, right? But a tragic figure. And he is tragic. I have wrestled and wrestled and wrestled with Samson as I've been studying this. I feel so bad about Samson, right? I mean, that's the right way to say it. I feel bad about Samson. How do you fumble this? I mean, how do you have a gift like this and still end up the way you do? But then, of course, that's the scary part is we all could be that. We all could be Samson. So much here, so much I think we can take away. We've looked at the strength of Samson, not his physical strength, right? Obviously that is the defining characteristic of Samson, his strength. That's what he's known for. That's the big draw for this story. But we talked about some inner strength that he had. Samson was not this. I feel like so many times he gets colored as this really bad guy who had this one really good thing going for him, and God begrudgingly used him. And I don't believe that. I don't see that. I think Samson was a man of faith. That was a man of very strong will. That was a man who believed in God and believed in the cause. I think that's what I see that. I see that in the scripture. We see that he is mentioned moving forward. They call back to Samson and his great faith in leading the children of Israel. I think he was a good person who had some really big issues. And we talked about that. We talked about what we can learn from him and his strengths, his confidence in the Lord, the idea that he was willing to stick with it no matter what, to the end. And he had that drive. He had that single-mindedness that can be good, that can be positive. We started off last Sunday looking at two major struggles of Samson. We've seen the strength of Samson. Right now we're looking at the struggles of Samson. And we're talking about two. Keep the idea of two in mind. Samson is a man of duality. His whole story is very coded with duality, right? The greatest being, which we're going to get to at the end, strength and weakness. We'll talk about that here in just a little bit. But remember, we started here last Sunday in verse 18 of chapter 16. Not verse 18, excuse me, verse 21. This is when Samson has had his hair shaved from his head by Delilah, and the Philistines fall on him, and they're able to finally capture him after all these years of him being public enemy number one for the Philistines. They finally get him. In verse 21, it says, "But the Philistines took him and put out his eyes and brought him down to Gaza and bound him with fetters of brass, and he did grind in the prison house." Last Sunday, we talked about the idea there were two. Obviously, Samson's got a lot of things going on, but I feel like they really fall under two main categories, two main struggles that he had that are both addressed, I think, symbolically and, if we're being honest, ironically, in this verse. What do the Philistines do to him? They do two things to him. What's the first thing we looked at last Sunday? What did they do to him, number one? Miss Pat's not here, so I can talk about eyes all I want. She's not even listening. All right? He took out his eyes. And what did we look at last Sunday? What was Samson's first major struggle? His sight. He had some vision problems. He saw, he wanted, right? He would purposefully go out of his way to satisfy that sight. Even to the, and remember we even showed how it got to the point where that was his whole frame of reference. Everything in his life he only saw. He was very short-sighted, right? He saw it all in relation to how it affected him. That at the end of that story where he says, "I want to be avenged, God. God, give me strength so I can be avenged." That just breaks my heart that after all those years of serving God, the only thing he can come up with at the end of his life is, "I want to be avenged for my eyes." Not for God's people, not for the atrocities that the Philistines have oppressed them with. Not for God's glory, not for victory. He says, "I want to be avenged because they took my eyes." And at the very end, I mean, God still, in his closing moments of his life, here is God in his grace using Samson, still allowing Samson to be used. And yet in that very final moment, we still see Samson not getting it. And I just find that so tragic. We saw he had problems with sight. Samson struggled with sight, but Samson struggled with something else. Verse 21 here says they put out his eyes. What's the second thing that they did to him? Took him down to Gaza and did what? Bound him, right? We see this throughout his whole story here. There's this theme, which we'll get to. We're going to come back to that when we talk about some of the symbolism in Samson's life. But they wanted to bind him. They wanted to bring him under control. You notice never at any point in the life of Samson does it ever say the Philistines are trying to kill him, right? Never says that. And I believe there's a reason for that. I believe because for them, the victory was not in Samson being removed. The victory was in Samson being restrained. They wanted to show that they had the power, right? They were the oppressors. That's what they go on to do once they do have him, right? Verse 23, the lords of the Philistines gathered them together to offer a great sacrifice unto Dagon, their God, and to rejoice. For they said, "Our God hath delivered Samson, our enemy, into our hand." That's why they wanted to bind him, right? It wasn't, "Oh, Samson is a problem. We want to get rid of the problem." It's no, Samson is an affront to us. And we want to take him and show the world that we have the mastery here. And they bind him with brass chains in verse 21. And I feel like this is oh boy, I've just lost the word that I'm wanting to think of. We see they put out his eyes in reference to his sight. I believe that this here, binding him with these fetters of brass, is a reference to his other major issue, which is this. Samson struggled with sight, but secondly, Samson struggled with submission. Samson kind of wanted to do his own thing, didn't he? And I want to look at that today. I want to break that down just a little bit. Samson struggled with sight, but he also struggled with submission, the second of his major character flaws. What can we learn about that today? Let's look at Samson himself with this problem that he had with submission. I've got 3 ideas for you about this issue today, just like we saw with the sight. 3 struggles that he had with submission. First one, very obvious. Look at chapter 14 with me. Judges chapter 14. Judges chapter 14. And let's start reading in verse 1. It says, Samson went down to Timnath and saw a woman in Timnath of the daughters of the Philistines. And he came up and told his father and his mother and said, I have seen a woman in Timnath. I have what? I've seen a woman. See? Vision problems. I've seen a woman in Timnath of the daughters of the Philistines. Now therefore get her for me to wife. Then his father and his mother said unto him, Is there never a woman among the daughters of thy brethren, or among all of my people, that thou goest to take a wife of the uncircumcised Philistine? Samson, what are you doing? Right? Look at chapter 15, verse 11. It says, And 3,000 men of Judah went to the top of the rock Edom and said to Samson, this is Samson, remember, Samson comes down to see his wife. He says, I gave your wife to somebody else. He says, how dare you do that? I'm going to pay you guys back for this. And he does the thing with the foxes. And then the people say, why are all our crops burnt? And they said, because this guy gave Samson's wife away. And they say, let's kill him. And they kill him. Gosh. And then Samson says, now I'm going to do a big murder on all of you, right? He smote him hip and thigh with a great slaughter. And then he goes to the rock Edom. He's dwelling in the rock. I guess a cave. I'm assuming it's a cave. I mean, that seems to be the tenor of the words here. He's in a cave. Philistines show up. The army of the Philistines comes up. They camp in Judah. And of course, the Judahites, which I think is the right word. I think Judahites. I think I read it somewhere else. Anyway, they say, hey, ¿por qué? Why? What's going on here? Why are you guys, we've been paying tribute. We've been doing our part. We haven't been doing a rebellion on you guys. They say, oh, no, it's not you guys. It's Samson. We're for Samson. Oh, and they go down to get Samson at the rock Edom. Verse 11, 3,000 men of Judah went to the top of the rock Edom and said to Samson, knowest thou not that the Philistines are rulers over us? What is this thou hast done unto us? And he said unto them, as they did unto me, so have I done unto them. Right? Here come the people of Judah, and they're like, Samson, you're causing trouble. These people are our overlords. They're the authority right now. They're the sheriff in town. We got to do what they say. And here's Samson. I can just see Samson. I guarantee you, Samson didn't even look at him while he was talking. He's probably like, They did that to me, so I got him back. I guarantee you, whatever he was doing, I don't know if he was whittling a stick or gnawing on a bone, or I don't know. But I guarantee you, he didn't even look up from what he was doing because he was so indifferent to it. And now don't get me wrong. God's using all this specifically with the Philistines, right? That's what it says. It tells us he's using this. He's using Samson to pick a fight with the Philistines that will go on for hundreds of years. But there's a reason behind it. But the idea is this: Samson was someone who really had, who struggled when it came to disregarding authority, right? And we see, so our first thought is this: Samson, understatement of the year, could be stubborn. Samson could be stubborn. Now I feel like this is a perfect place to weave this in. Remember, what is the title of this entire series in the book of Judges? Do you remember what we've called this? This entire body of study that we're doing in the book of Judges, I've given it the title taken from the verse in Judges chapter 2 where it says they kept following their stubborn way, right? And here we see it. Like I said, Samson is the embodiment of this entire book of the children of Israel and their behavior through this whole period of time. Here's Samson. I don't want to. or conversely, someone says you can't do that. He says, well, I'm gonna, right? Either way, we see that he's disrespectful and rebellious toward the authority in his life. And again, symbolic of the children of Israel, what do we know about the children of Israel? How many times does God deal with this? Think about this. Going all the way back to Exodus. They cross the Red Sea. Yay! They get to Mount Sinai. Yay! Moses goes up the mountain and God gives him the law. Yay! And he comes back down and there's the people doing an idolatry. Right? And it's like 40 days. You couldn't last 40 days? Really? You couldn't make it 40 days without turning your back on all of this. And remember what God tells him in Exodus 32. He says, the Lord said unto Moses, I have seen this people, and behold, it is a stiff-necked people. Like we talk about tripping right at the gate, right? Right out the gate, man, just poof. And we see that is a problem right at the very beginning, and it's an ongoing problem for the children of Israel. Their stubbornness, their refusal to comply. We see it. Remember, he warns them against this right before they go into the promised land in Deuteronomy. He says, you guys are stiff-necked. You gotta deal with that. You gotta stop that. And then he tells them, remember in Deuteronomy like 28:29, he says, you're not gonna. You're gonna go do your own thing, but I gotta tell you not to, because that's what I'm supposed to do. Even though I know you're gonna be stiff-necked. And then remember in Acts chapter 7, you get all the way into the New Testament. Here's Stephen, when they've got Stephen in front of the rulers, right? He says, ye stiff-necked and uncircumcised in heart and ears, ye do always resist the Holy Ghost, as your fathers did, so do ye. We're talking thousands of years later. Guess what? Still the same problem. He says, you guys are still just as stiff-necked now as these guys were all the way back in Exodus. And so this has been a major ongoing issue for God's people. And here we see the perfect embodiment of that in the life of Samson. And we see how devastating that can be to him as an individual, and then by extension to God's people. Right? What does Samuel say when Saul comes back from the battle with Amalek? He comes back and he says, I've done the will of the Lord. And Samuel says, I hear sheep. And he says, well, I did the will of the Lord, but we kept some sheep for sacrifice. He says, that wasn't the will of the Lord. Well, I've done the will of the Lord, but the people did this. And he says, you're supposed to kill everybody. He says, I've done the will of the Lord, but we kept Agag. He's the king. I mean, we couldn't kill him. And Samuel's like, I have to believe Samuel had high blood pressure dealing with Saul. But remember, as he's going, we know the story of Amalek, right? And Saul comes back and he didn't do his job, and Samuel keeps calling him out on it, and he has to keep backing up. Saul keeps, well, it wasn't me, or, oh, well, we did the right thing, or, well, we thought we were supposed to do this, or, well, the people made me do it, right? He's doing everything he can to pass the buck, right? He'd have been a good funeral director, actually. No, I'm sorry. He'd have been he'd been good in middle management. Let's say it that way, right? Saul would have been good in middle management. That was somebody else's job. And finally, Samuel pins him down and says, look, God said do X. God said do the thing. You did not do the thing. And he says, and that's a problem. Remember? Because rebellion is what? As the sin of witchcraft. We know that phrase. Do you know what the rest of the verse says? It says, stubbornness is as iniquity and idolatry. What's the big no-no for the children of Israel? Over and over and over that God says. He says, you guys, I don't want you to do this. I don't want you to do that. But I really don't want you to do this one big thing. What is it? Worship other idols. Worship other gods. That's the big no-no. And here is Samuel saying, if you're talking about the 10 Commandments and a specific list of these are the ordinances of the Lord. Yes, idolatry, top of the list. He says, but overarching all of this is this idea of non-compliance. He says, if you don't comply, none of it matters. The compliance is actually the critical component here. And here we see Samson rebelling, stiffening that neck at every turn. And just like with the children of Israel, as a whole, we see what it can do in the life of an individual. Samson could be stubborn. Secondly, look at chapter 14 and verse 8 with me. After a time, he returned to take her, that's the woman at Timnath, his unnamed wife, the heifer. Poor gal. He returned to take her, and he turned aside to see the carcass of the lion. Remember, this is the lion that he had. He ripped apart. It says, behold, there was a swarm of bees and honey in the carcass of the lion. He took thereof in his hands and went on eating, and came to his father and mother, and he gave them, and they did eat. But he told them not that he had taken the honey out of the carcass of the lion. Look at chapter 15, verse 15. He found a new jawbone of an ass and put forth his hand and took it and slew 1,000 men therewith. Chapter 16, verse 17. He told her all his heart and said unto her, there hath not come a razor upon mine head, for I have been a Nazarite unto God from my mother's womb. If I be shaven, then my strength will go from me, and I shall become weak and be like any other man. We're going to discuss the Nazarite vow and its connection with the life of Samson again. We'll get into that some more with the whole symbolism side of this. But for today, we see here that this Nazarite vow, this was something that you folks are familiar with. It came with some rules, didn't it? It came with some restrictions. And we see consistently through the life of Samson that Samson kind of fudges on those, doesn't he? Like, There's also there's an implication. We don't know for sure. It talks about when they're going to Timnath, they go through the vineyards, and then when they get married, right? There's a feast. It doesn't explicitly say that Samson drank alcohol, fruit of the vine, right? It doesn't say explicitly that he did it, but boy, it really feels like it's hinting around it. Okay, and I will say this. I want to say one thing. The whole idea of not touching the dead bodies. You say, well, what about Samson and the slaughter, right? God using him to fight the battles. I'm going to give you my honest opinion. I think God was giving him a special exception with that one. That's just me. There's no verse that says that. There's no authority. There's no authoritative source that says that in any way. That's just me personally, because it says God brought Samson for this purpose, right? To deliver the children of Israel from the Philistines. That meant he was going to have to do some battle. So I'm wondering, and it doesn't mention anything about, the dead bodies, dead human bodies in the restrictions that he's telling to Manoah and his wife in chapter 13. So I'm guessing, totally in the dark here, folks, on this, but I'm guessing maybe in this instance, since it was a special version of the Nazarite vow, and we know that because the Nazarite vow was temporary, right? It was temporary, and it was up to the person who was taking the vow to determine the length of time. But with Samson, we see that's not the case. His Nazarite vow was what? Permanent. It was lifelong. He says from the day he's born till the day of his death, he shall be a Nazarite. So it's already a special version of a Nazarite vow. Maybe God is saying that's one thing that I'm not going to hold to on the Nazarite vow is the touching dead people thing, because he's got to do some battle, okay? But the rest of it, right? He gives them these restrictions, and Samson knows about these rules, right? He knew that his hair was part of this in chapter 16. He knew enough that when he brought that honey to mom and dad, he didn't say anything about where he got it, because he knew that he shouldn't be touching the dead lion, right? He knew these things. He knew these rules. He knew he was supposed to be following these rules. And he's like, it's not a big deal. See, Samson could be stubborn. Samson could also be slack, couldn't he? He wasn't the best when it came to following regulations, right? With small things. And we see that this is another key idea through the scripture that God discusses, that Christ discusses. This idea of taking care of little things, right? Because if you don't take care of little things, we talk about this with our boys all the time. What do little problems become? Little problems become big problems. I know, I've got 4 of them. No, I'm kidding. I know, yes. You've taken a grievous wound. Little problems become big problems. We were just talking last night, broken windows theory, right? New York City, Rudy Giuliani. That whole idea of if you go into an area and the windows are broken, everyone thinks, well, this place, nobody cares. It's not policed. It's not patrolled. There's nobody here to protect property, lives and property, right? And so this must be a place where we can get away with stuff. And one of his agendas was, hey, we're going to fix this. No broken windows, right? If you fix the windows, it's going to make it seem like this is a place that's taken care of, and people will think twice about trying to act nefariously in this area. And all kinds of correlating ideas. We're familiar with this, right? Maintenance, things like that. You let a small problem go for too long, it becomes a bigger problem. Christ, Luke 16, he that is faithful in that which is least is faithful in that which is much. And then he says the inverse of that. He says, but if you're unfaithful in the little things, then you won't be able to handle the big things. What's he say in Jeremiah? If you can't run with the footmen, how are you going to handle, do you know this? Do you know this verse? If you can't run with the footmen, how are you going to handle the horses? If you can't keep up with the foot soldiers, how are you on earth are you going to do battle against the cavalry? Newsflash, you can't. Cavalry was the force multiplier before mechanized infantry. It was, and that's the point Jeremiah is making. He says, if you can't handle the small problems, what are you going to do when the actual big problems show up? If you won't follow the small rules, then you're going to have some major issues down the road. And here's Samson. He says, I'm not supposed to touch dead body, but man, that honey looks really good. And he eats the honey. And does he die right away? No, he doesn't. He goes on about his business. He grabs the jawbone of an ass. By the way, remember we talked about this. There is one of the recurrent themes through the book of Judges is the weapon, right? Not in every story, but very often it focuses on the weapon. With Ehud, it's his dagger, his left-handed dagger. With Deborah and Barak and Jael, it talks about Jael and her nail. Hey, yeah. Right? Gideon, it talks about the sword of the Lord and of Gideon. We see frequently where there's references made to the weapon. We get to the life of Samson. He fights that lion. That's the first episode we see of conflict in any way in Samson's life. And how does he defeat the lion? With bare hands. And we get to the battle with the Philistines, and he grabs a jawbone. Not supposed to be touching that. Not supposed to be. God in his mercy allows him to use this. But I guess what I'm getting at is when it says that about he did this with his bare hands, I think the idea is saying he was so strong. God gave him what he needed. He didn't need anything else. He could do it just with the power of God alone. And yet he still reaches out and takes that jawbone. We see he puts himself in this situation where his hair can be removed. Not following those little rules can lead to bigger things. And folks, we're seeing this, right? This is one of, I personally think this is one of the defining overt issues of our day is our society is crumbling. We are watching our civilization erode in front of us. And I think a lot of it, not all of it, but a lot of it you can see in the fact people won't even do the little things anymore. Best example, perfect example, the cart corral. If you're the kind of person that won't put the cart back in the cart corral, guess what? You're the kind of person that when it all crashes, you're going to turn into a cannibal and stab people in the back and steal stuff from other people. And that's me. That's me personally. That's how I feel about it. I mean, if you can't do the little thing now, something so simple, not letting your dog bark at 3 in the morning, if you won't do the basic little civil things, what does that show about you as a person on the inside? Samson could be stubborn. Samson could be slack. That is a submission issue, folks. People think, well, because it's a little rule, it's not that important. Nobody died, right? That would be the argument. I didn't put my cart back in the cart corral. Nobody died, right? And you're right. Nobody died. But come on. We have to have some kind of standard. We have to have remember we talked about this? That's what the law is. That's what government is. Up until the time of Noah, it was a free-for-all. Everybody just did what they wanted to do. And after the flood, and God has a soft reboot of humanity, he says, all right, we're gonna have to have a baseline of some kind. We're going to have some kind of rule. And you're not allowed to go beyond that rule. You're not allowed to go beyond that boundary. That rule, by the way, that baseline, we've talked about this, that's the minimum amount of love that God requires that we show to our fellow man. That's what the law is. The law is a function of love. It is the least amount of love that we're allowed to get away with our fellow man. He says you can't love them less than this. We have to have that line. And yes, we have that in hard and fast legal laws as opposed to illegal laws. No, in legality, in our constitutions and in our written down codes, we have those. But there's more to it than just that, right? There are less they're not criminal, right? We wouldn't say they're criminal things, offenses, but there's things you just don't do. There's rules that you should just follow for the good of all mankind. And if you won't follow those little things, if you won't submit, because that's what it really is, you're submitting to the people around you when you do that. When you put your cart back in the cart corral, you're submitting. If you won't do that, there's a problem. Samson could be stubborn. Samson could be slack. I don't know how to count. There's 2. Samson could be slack. Lastly, look at chapter 14, chapter 14, verse 16. Samson's wife wept before him and said, "Thou dost but hate me, and lovest me not." No. Thou hast put forth a riddle. I'm so sorry, folks. He called her the heifer. It wasn't me. Thou hast put forth a riddle unto the children of my people, and hast not told it me. And he said unto her, Behold, I have not told it my father nor my mother. Why should I tell you? And she wept before him the 7 days while their feast lasted. And it came to pass on the 7th day that he told her, because she lay sore upon him. Fine. I'll tell you. Get this woman off my back. Epic foreshadowing, right? Because what do we see in chapter 16? Verse 16, it came to pass when she pressed him daily with her words and urged him, so that his soul was vexed unto death, that he told her all his heart and said unto her, There hath not come a razor upon my head. Again, the duality, right? We see early in Samson's life, we see this episode with his unnamed wife. And boy, is that a huge red flag for what's coming. Because now we see later in his life, he's in a similar situation. And what does he do? He gives in again. And here's the weird thing about submission. Samson had a problem with submission in that he was unsubmissive until he shouldn't have been, right? We see Samson could be stubborn. Samson could be slack. But lastly, Samson could be soft when it came to submission. There were times in his life when he shouldn't submit. And guess what? Those were the times where he finally, oh, all right, I'll give in. Right? And this is what I was saying at the beginning. Here is the great duality of Samson. The man that is defined by his strength, right? His failure comes when he is weak and he submits. The one time that he shouldn't. The one time he shouldn't give in is when he flubs. The one time he should have taken a stand. Samson's not the only one to do this. Remember Elijah? Elijah is on Mount Carmel. One of the best stories in the Bible. Elijah on Mount Carmel. The God that answereth by fire. And they had the Baal, the thing with Baal and the prophets, and they're up there and they're hooting and hollering and cutting themselves. And Elijah is being the ultimate troll, sitting off to the side, laughing at them and making jokes and being sarcastic, right? It kills me. This is supposed to be like this really epic. I mean, they're on a mountaintop, folks. How could it not be epic? They're on a mountain, and there's a crowd, right? There's people around, and here's Elijah over there doing stand-up routine. Maybe you're God's. Maybe he's at the Port of John. Maybe he's on a journey, and he's riffing on them, right? And then it's his turn, right? And he totally goes all out. He's like, dump a bunch of water on my altar. Watch this, right? Talk about confidence. When he calls to God, and I love it. It says, before the words are out of his mouth, the fire is there, and the whole altar is gone. It's just gone. It's just kaboom, right? And it's so impactful. Do you remember what the people say? The people shout. What do they say? They say what? The Lord, he is the God. Not he is God. He is the definitive Elohim God. He is the mighty one. They're so shaken by this. And here's Elijah, and he says, yes, you see it. This is right. These guys are false gods. This is wrong. We shouldn't be doing this. Yes, you're on board. Bring the prophets. And remember, he executes the false prophets. One man executes 450 false prophets of Baal in the sight of the people with the blessing of God, the God that answereth by fire. And verse 1 of the next chapter says Jezebel was mad and she told him, and he goes, oh no, I better run. And I'm thinking, you can read that and you're like, Elijah, what are you doing, man? You think about what you just did. Calling down fire from heaven, totally wasting that altar in front of everybody and wiping out those heathen enemy evil prophets and on a mountaintop. You did it on a mountaintop, Elijah. And then what? The queen is mad and she sends you a nasty text message and you go, oh no, I have to run. I have to flee for my life, right? And he does. He flees. And he goes to Horeb. And remember what God asks him? He says, what are you doing? What doest thou here, Elijah? The one time of all times, if you think anybody would have ever been stoked and confident, I would have thought it would have been Elijah after Mount Carmel. And he says, why are you fleeing? He says, you were doing so good. Why are you submitting now? Why are you giving in now? What's Proverbs say? If thou faint in the day of adversity, what? Thy strength is small. And who is Samson? Samson is the man of strength. What an example. In the one moment when he should have taken a stand, in the one moment where he should have hardened that neck and not bowed and not given in, that's the one moment where he caves. And look at what it does. He is finally captured and bound. He was overcome. Paul in Romans 12, he says, be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good. Remember? Here's Samson, the one time he should have taken a stand, but instead he falters, he bows, and he is overcome. He was soft. The man who was the strongest person who ever lived was too soft. Samson struggled with submission. And what does Proverbs tell us? Proverbs 29, verse 1. He that ofteneth hardeneth his heart. He that being reproveth and hardeneth his heart shall suddenly be destroyed, and that without remedy. And I think that is Samson in a nutshell. We see in this verse, in verse 21 of chapter 16, they put out his eyes, and they bound him with chains. We see God addressing the two main issues in Samson's life. In a physical way, he's addressing the spiritual problems. And what a tragic what a tragic place for him to end up in. And that's where we're actually going to go next Sunday. We're going to look at the final part of Samson's life here and what we can learn from it. We've seen the strength of Samson. We've seen the struggles of Samson. Finally, we're going to see the shattering of Samson. I think we can take away some good qualities from him there, like we said in that first lesson. But folks, these two big issues that he had, controlling how he saw things, controlling his perception, and not being willing to submit when it was appropriate, not being willing to take a stand when it was inappropriate to submit. These are things I think we face every day. We're not Samson. I'm not Samson. I'm not the strongest man who ever lived. But boy, do I face these same kind of problems, don't I? I think we all do, to some degree. And I think that these ideas in this story, the life of Samson, serves as a warning to us about these two areas. When we think we're on top of it, when we think we're strong, we better be careful. Because there are some traps out there. There are some pitfalls that are lurking for us. How are we when it comes to how we see things? How are we when it comes to submitting? By the way, folks, the children of Israel being stiff-necked, we're not doing too much better. The American people especially. Boy, do we have a compliance problem. We are reaching a place as a society where we just refuse to be controlled in any way. And there's only one end to that. Control will be exerted at some point in some way. We can do it now when we are the ones making the choice and submitting, or someone else is going to make us. I don't want to get there. And it starts with us as believers doing what we should be doing in our lives, in our hearts, being submissive. Let's make sure we're doing that today. Let's pray. Father, help us to not fall into the same trap as Samson. In spite of his great strength, we see, Lord, that he caved at the worst possible time. Samson was a man who thought he was above following the rules, following the authority. He was Samson. He was strong. No one could touch him until they did. I pray that you would help us to look at his life and be warned, be instructed. Help us with our submissiveness today. Lord, help us to submit to one another. Help us to realize that is part of what true love is. It's putting other people first, putting their will above our own. And if we would all do that as a people, as a society, if we would seek the benefit, seek the profit of others, we could have a utopia. And I pray that we as believers would understand this truth, accept this truth, or that we would do our best to live this truth, the truth of a Christ-like submissive spirit, the servant of all. I pray that you will speak to us through these words, through the story, and that you'll bless us as we close this morning. In Christ's name, amen. We're going to sing one final hymn, folks. One final song. One final song, number 606, My Desire. Short chorus here, number 606, My Desire to be like Jesus, my desire to be like him. My desire to be like Jesus, my desire to be like him. His Spirit fill me, His love o'erwhelm me, in deed and word to be like him. Let's sing it one more time. My desire to be like Jesus, my desire to be like him. His Spirit fill me, His love o'erwhelm me, in deed and word to be like him. God bless you all. Thank you for being here with us this morning. We'll have Bible study at 3 o'clock. Have a lovely afternoon. No, I can do it. I got this.